I don't think we'll ever see an end of hostilities between Britain and France, even if it's just on the rugby field. But going back historically, de Gaulle would not let us join what was called the common market in those days until he had got a CAP up and running, and he then looked round for somebody to pay for it, and we were what we call the fall guys. And we always have felt in Britain that whilst we have been putting a lot more money in, we put in twice as much as we take out, we have been getting rather a bad deal, particularly on this Pillar 2. We get a very poor deal out of Pillar 2. Well, actually, there are two questions of balance here. One is the amount of money per hectare received by a farmer in any individual country. Some of them do very badly, Estonia, Latvia, etc., and some of them do very well. Holland, I think. Britain is somewhere in the middle. We're just the wrong side of the average, so that isn't really a big issue for us. I think what you're really talking about, though, is the capping, where some farmers and some farm businesses receive a very great deal of money, and the idea is that they can manage on their own. Yes, the theory is very nice, but it's extremely easy to restructure a farm business to grab as much subsidy as possible. And although the Commission have said, oh well, we will be watching out for this type of constructive restructuring, actually it's very difficult to tell that from the genuine article, because people do get divorced. Two brothers who have been farming land, their sons come in, it's getting too big, the business is split. There's an unexpected death in the family and there are high taxes to pay, the business is split. You cannot say that a business is being split just to get more subsidy. And so I feel, although this is maybe a worthy aspiration, I just don't think it's going to work. And, on top of that, of course, the British farming businesses are going to suffer proportionately far more, although I do accept that the money will stay in Britain, it won't be held back here. You've seen this, I'm the UK Independence Party. We would much rather have a British agricultural policy for the British farmers and, crucially, for the British consumers. And so, whatever they do here, I feel, is always a muddle, always a compromise. When you consider you have got to try and adopt a common agricultural policy for an area 200 miles north of the Arctic Circle in Finland and down somewhere in the bottom corner of Crete. At the same time, you've got to have a common agricultural policy for farming that uses 550 horsepower tractors and those farms that use draft oxen. You really cannot do it, and you throw in 22 different languages and some completely different cultures into that mix, and it isn't going to work. And some people may say, oh, Agnew's just being negative. I think I'm being practical. It might have worked in the early 70s when there were about 6 countries involved. Now it's got too big, and I'm sure you'll know the story of the biblical story of the Tower of Babel, where people spoke all these different languages, and in the end the whole tower fell down, and I think that's what's going to happen here. The way the EU have organised it, when they took competence of this about 13 years ago, so we, as an individual member state, have to stand back and work their system. And their system is like a series of links in a chain. And the first link in the chain writes down what he's got and what he's done and passes it on. But if one link in the chain is fraudulent and actually says, I put beef in here when they know they put horse in, that's taken as gospel all the way up the chain. And that's where the problem has been. It's so easy to defraud it. And of course, you've got countries have come into the European Union where fraud and corruption is standard practice. That is the big problem. And so our Minister of Agriculture, our Secretary of State for Agriculture, as we would call him, he could do nothing about this. He had to get European agreement, etc., that made him look very neutralised.